Good evening, Liberty Defenders. Welcome to Southern Liberty. I am your host, Roderick Threets. We're going to shake it up, change it around a little bit here. We're playing with some new intros, things of that nature. So, mind the mess as we reconstruct the foundation on which the Torture Liberty Media Foundation Incorporated was built upon. Again, I'm your host, Roderick Threets, and every week this show, we challenge the mainstream narrative, pulling back the curtain on the cultural, political, and constitutional battles shaping our nation. We break down the exact legal flashpoints where fundamental principles from state statutes to the supreme law of the land are tested in real time. Today, we look past the coast-to-coast headlines of a high-profile trial to look at the raw mechanics of justice. We're traveling up to a transit platform in the Pacific Northwest for a forensic look at a case where what wasn't heard mattered a whole lot more than what was seen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Southern Liberty. Let's get it. It's past time to expose the Democrats and Republicans for usurping liberty and freedom. What you are about to hear is the amalgam of passion and truth. This is the Southern Liberty Radio Show. Welcome back, Liberty Defenders. As we get into this, we're going to take a look at a case that happened a little while ago. It was brought to my attention today. It's been talked about. It was brought to my attention earlier in the week, but it was one of those things that I decided to consider. And we're doing it, and we're doing this freehand. Like, I have a couple bullet points and I have the narrative to the story, and I'm going to try to tell it to you best I can, because a lot of you know I like doing this on the fly. And those of you that were, on my TikTok live earlier, you know how soon I thought about this subject literally 10 minutes ago. So I haven't even really done any true research into it. I might be doing a little bit as we're talking along here, but I know the gist of the story, so I can kind of piece these things together. I even got the document from the court up here, so that's going to help a little bit too. But I want you to understand, right? As an American society, a group of people that understand the rule of law is very important, right? We believe that law is a machine that is made of cold, hard facts, right? We tell ourselves that if we just have the videotape, we have the truth, right? But what happens when the videotape is completely silent? Right? I'm going to take you back to Oregon. We're going back to Oregon. The summer of 2025, on a crowded public transit platform in downtown Portland, two men collided in a matter of seconds. One man walked away The other was left bleeding on the concrete from a blade to the shoulder. It was a stabbing captured perfectly on a government surveillance camera. It looked like an open and shut case when you looked at the video. But in a courtroom, 10 seconds of silence can open up a canyon of doubt. Now, because while the camera showed a physical scuffle, it couldn't capture the words flying through the air, right? Because obviously cameras can't see words. They can read lips, but they can't see words, right? And in America, those words carry a heavy weight. Under the First Amendment, right? Let's remember, under the First Amendment and the landmark Supreme Case rulings like Brandenburg versus Ohio, the law protects speech that is vile, hateful, and offensive. Words alone can never legally justify a weapon, except the defense in this case. Listen to me. The defense in this case didn't argue that words justified a stabbing. They argued the words predicted a killing. Yes, this defense attorney actually said that. And at some point, the Portland jury wasn't just looking at a video. They were forced to step into the brutal realities of life on the street, right? Parsing out split-second timeline where the sequence of a single racial slur meant the difference between a violent assault and lawful self-defense. And when the tape is actually silent, remember, no audio, who carries the burden of proof? And how much is a man's freedom worth when the government can't prove what was whispered or shouted in the seconds before a fight? So let's talk about the incident at the bench. And again, I'm kind of reading this off of the affidavits and the court case. So bear with me, right? And I'm kind of putting in my own words, take the legalese out and all that good stuff, right? So this was again downtown Portland, right? And the surveillance camera sits on a perch high above the public transit bench, right? Kind of like in you know how you have the enclave, the overhang, right? That goes over to protect you from rain. There's a camera up in that area, right? And this bench was at Northwest Fifth Street. Those of you familiar with Portland, you know where this is, right? And just after 9:30 a.m., right in the middle of the summer of 2025, on the bench sits Gregory Howard Jr., a 43-year-old white man. Walking towards him from across the platform is Gary Omar Edwards, also 43 years old, a black man. In Edwards' right hand, held out in front of him, is a fixed blade knife. Okay? This entire interaction takes only a few seconds. As Edwards draws close, Howard suddenly lunges off the bench, throws his hands out, violently pushing Edwards away. A chaotic, desperate physical struggle breaks out. Arms flail, a flash of steel cuts happen, and then it's over. Edwards turns and walks calmly away into the city, and Howard slumps back, clutching his shoulder. He is bleeding heavily from a deep stab wound. When the Portland Police Central Bike Squad tracked down and arrested Gary Edwards a short time later, okay, it looked like the easiest conviction a prosecutor could ever ask for. They had the weapon and they had the video. The victim bleeding from a clean entry wound, and most okay, let me go back. So, but the problem is the transit video has no audio. And in a court of law within the state of Oregon, the absolute silence was worth the man's freedom. And today we're going to look at a trial that forced a jury to step inside a violent, unprovoked street ambush and desperate split-second act of self-defense. The only catch? Both sides claimed they were defending themselves. Now, to understand how an open and shut stabbing case results in a total acquittal, you have to look at the two men involved. Neither Edwards or Howard were strangers to the legal system. Both were experiencing chronic homelessness in Portland, and both carried what defense attorneys call heavy baggage, extensive criminal records, and that equalized their credibility on the witness stand. There is no clean-cut victim here. There was no reliable narrator. So when the jury began just 5 months later, the courtroom became less about character and more about a forensic battle over a silent timeline. Now, the prosecution's narrative was simple. Okay, it was built entirely on what the human eye can see. They played the silent transit video for the jury on a loop. The prosecution said, "Look at the screen. Greg Howard is sitting down. He is unarmed. He is minding his own business. Gary Edwards approaches him with a lethal weapon already drawn. By any reasonable standard of safety, Edwards is the aggressor, right? And to prove that the racial slurs didn't cause the violence, the state relied on Howard's own explosive words caught on police body camera at the scene. Okay? And the body camera at the scene, actually, you know what? Let me see if I can find that body camera real quick for y'all. I'm sure I can. And I will play it. I will gladly play it. If I can find it proper here. Let's see. Give me a minute. I'll find. I know it's here. Okay, I'm not going to worry about it. It's too crazy to get in there and put that audio. So I'm gonna tell you from the court documents what it said. Howard says, "I called him a nigger after he knifed me." The state argued this was a textbook human reaction, shock, pain, and vile reactionary insult born out of being stabbed in the shoulder. Yes, the slur was horrible, but it was a consequence of the stabbing, not the trigger. But then the defense stood up, turned off the video, and presented an entirely different timeline. Edwards' defense attorney asked the jury to discard their suburban assumptions and look through the lens of what's called the street economy. In the subculture of Portland's unhoused community, showing an object isn't inherently an assault. A knife is a multi-tool. It's a survival mechanism. It's currency. Edwards testified that he wasn't stalking a victim. He claimed he held the knife out loosely, walking up to Howard to ask a routine question. Would you be willing to trade this blade for a pack of cigarettes? And then came the emotional core of the defense. Edwards testified that the transit video wasn't actually silent to the men on the platform. He claimed that the very second his eyes met Howard's, long before the physical step was taken, Howard began hurling a barrage of threatening, racially charged abuse. Edwards testified that Howard shouted nigger repeatedly, threatening to kill him. The defense argued when Howard violently lunged off the transit bench, Edwards didn't see an innocent man defending his space. He saw a racially motivated physical escalation of an imminent attack. The knife wasn't an ambush, it was the shield. This is what they're arguing. Now, there's another part of this that I found too. I'm scrolling down in the document, right? There's this loophole they played, right? And I want y'all to listen to how dangerous this is. If any part of this you pay attention to, this is the part you need to pay attention to. Okay? Because now, right, I presented you with two conflicting stories, right? Grafted onto the same 10 seconds of silent film. If Howard used a slur before the scuffle, Edwards has a massive claim to self-defense, right? If Howard used a slur after the scuffle, Edwards is guilty of felony assault. How does a jury decide who's telling the truth when there's no audio to prove it? Well, the answer, cut and dry, is they don't have to. And this is where the strict nuance of Oregon law and the bedrock of the United States Constitution turns the entire case on its head. To look at this purely from a free speech perspective, the law is completely unflinching. We know this, right? The First Amendment protects even the most detestable and vile and hate-filled speech imaginable, right? You heard me mention earlier, right? Brandenburg versus Ohio, right? And remember, the Supreme Court in this case ruled that government cannot criminalize inflammatory or hateful speech unless that speech is directed to inciting or is highly likely to produce imminent lawless action. So now, under the Brandenburg standard, right, Gregory Howard had a constitutional right to use reprehensible language. A racial slur on its own is not a crime, nor does it automatically give someone else the legal right to retaliate with physical force. Words alone cannot legally justify a stabbing. Right? But here's the twist the defense tried to do, right? Because the defense, they didn't argue that the words justified the violence. They were arguing that the words predicted the violence. Listen to what I'm telling you. Let me say that again to you, right? The defense did not argue that the words justified the violence. They argued that the words predicted the violence. You hear how dangerous that is? Right? Now, mind you, as I just pulled it up on the screen while we were talking, Oregon Revised Statute Section 161.209. A person is legally justified in using physical force to defend themselves from what they reasonably believe to be an imminent use of unlawful physical force. Right? Which is, as we know, is stand your ground. Right? That's stand your ground. Gary Edwards, right, the stabber, had no absolute legal duty to retreat back away. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Edwards, he was the victim here, right? Had no. Wait, God, I got my own thing screwed up. Sorry. Gary Edwards had no absolute legal duty to retreat back away or run from Gregory Howard when the shouting started. He had the recognized right to match physical force with physical force. And this is where the Brandenburg Doctrine and Oregon self-defense law collide on silent tape. The jury, right, had to decide if a reasonable person standing on that platform would hear those specific slurs combined with lethal threats and believed that imminent lawless action was about to happen to them. When Howard lunged off the bench, did he cross the line from protected hate speech into active physical assault? Now, because the transit video was completely silent, the state could not mathematically or evidentially prove that Howard was saying in those critical seconds before he lunged off the bench. They couldn't prove the slurs didn't start early, and they couldn't prove they weren't accompanied by a threat to Edward's life. Right? Now, keep in mind, in the eyes of American jurisprudence, a sequence of events that cannot be proven is the literal textbook definition of reasonable doubt. The prosecution carried the absolute burden to completely disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. Because they couldn't fill the silence of that tape, a legal tie had to go to the defendant. The defense team even used the prosecution's prized body camera footage against them, right? They told the jury, look at Gregory Howard. He is comfortable using vile, explosive racial slurs in front of uniformed police officers and medical personnel. If he is that bold with a badge in his face, imagine what he was shouting on that platform when he thought nobody was listening. So late last year, right, the Portland jury wrapped up their deliberations. They looked at the law, they looked at the science of the tape, and they delivered their verdict. Can you guess what the verdict was? Not guilty on all counts. Gary Omar Edwards walked out of the courtroom a free man. And we know in Oregon, the public reaction was divided, right? Here's my take. After hearing all that and going through all that for the first time ever with you guys here, right? This is a very dangerous ideological driven precedent. Because now, right, we hear, see, y'all have heard me talk about this before, and I got to say it out loud, right? Because now you get the full understanding of why I tell black people why I try to tell them not to let words bother them, right? If someone calls you a nigger, move the fuck on, right? Or you get those ones, a motherfucker called me a nigger, I'll fight them. Well, this precedent kind of gives them the right to do it if applied correctly. This is how, fuck free speech, right? This is what I'm telling you. Fuck free speech. If someone deems a word racially charged to them in Oregon, they have a right to hit you or stab you. The First Amendment is literally gone. This is what's disgusting about this. Because you don't know if the slur was said before or after. You know it was said after because he was talking to the cop and he said, I said it after I was stabbed, not before. And then you're gonna say, oh, he was comfortable saying that to police. What does that even mean? But here we go again, right? Again, and this is a topic we've talked about since Tuesday about being propagandized, right? To think or see a certain way, right? I mean, look at the race issue. And I'm tired of. I've stopped. So I've really stopped talking about that because it's bullshit. But look at the race issue, right? The propaganda is so deep that you have white people saying, "I'm not racist," like on cue when they see a black person, "I'm not racist." Like you're being propagandized into saying that. You're being forced into saying that because you've also been told that these people will try to fight you if they feel you say something racist. And guess what, people? Guess what? Because y'all decided to not push back against the narrative, right? And have to qualify yourself as not racist or anti-racist. Now these people have carte blanche to hit you, stab you, and even not less of killing you for saying a racial slur to a melanated person. I want you to hear me say that, because these white liberals have backed their ass down, forced other people, "Oh, you can't upset the black people. You got to be anti-racist." Now they have carte blanche up to the point of killing you if they feel justified and threatened by the racial slur you use. This is why it's very important not to get caught up in the propaganda, right? Don't get caught up in the social cues. Because if you feel it's not right and it's not right for you, it's not right. Call the shit out. When you see something presented to you and it may look funny, don't follow it. Don't go with the status quo. Don't get propagandized. This case was built on propaganda, and propaganda won because people were afraid to stand on business. And now these people have carte blanche to hurt you. Because a racial slur is threatening. So what's next? I'm gonna call a white person a cracker, and they're gonna whoop me. You hear what I'm saying? They're gonna come after me. They're gonna be justified to beat me and stab me and shoot me. Now, right? This that bullshit. I mean, this goes to the point of, how do you not believe your eyes? One man unarmed walks up to a guy, an armed guy walks up to a guy unarmed with the blade open. I'm sorry. No, you look, if you lack the self-control to not commit violence because a word is said to you, maybe you're not fit to be in civil society. Maybe you're not. Maybe you need to be in a mental asylum or exiled to the desert or something. Because there's zero justification ever to raise a weapon because someone says something to you. In my book, that's some pussy ass shit. And guys like Gary Omar Edwards are pussies, hoe ass bitches, whatever you want to call them today. Because if you lack the self-control, if you lack that self-control to allow stones to break your sticks, you get whatever's coming to you. You have no justification to do that. And that goes for anybody. If you really gonna raise a hand at somebody for speaking and saying what they want, don't get mad when you get a bullet in your chest. Don't get mad, get glad, and get ready to meet God. Is your life worth getting killed over words? We have forgotten as a society how we're supposed to operate. And there's too many people that look like me still get pissed off over that word and want to fight Tom, Dick, Harry, and Jane, but get mad when someone lay hands back on them. If you are that weak of an individual that you allow words to send you into rage, you need a counselor. You need some meds like lithium. You may even need a bottle of some stiff vodka to calm your ass down. That being said, I hope y'all go check out this case. Y'all go look at it. Go read it for yourself. Watch the videos, all that good stuff. But this is how liberal states break the United States Constitution and show favoritism to one way or the other, despite constitutional law and Supreme Court precedent. This is dangerous. And it needs to be corrected. My name is Roderick Threaton. I appreciate y'all chilling out with us this evening. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. I will let you know Monday show. Those of you know, y'all been with me for the last 9 years. It's not last 8 years. You know what happens on Monday on Memorial Day. You know what happens. I always bring the pre-recorded show, and the history of Memorial Day is played for you guys. But it should be available around 6:00 instead of 9:30. It'll be available around 6:00 p.m. Eastern, so you can listen to or watch it on the Rumble at your leisure. But those of you probably bored with that history, y'all have heard it for the last 8 years. I understand. But there's people out here that don't know the history of Memorial Day that need to hear it and what it actually stands for. So, with that being said, be safe, everybody. Love your neighbors. Love your family, but ultimately love yourself. Until next time, y'all. Peace and love.